once we reach artificial superintelligence, it's truly an alien intelligence, because it would be able to do things, to come up with things, to think about things that we cannot comprehend. And it's like an ant looking up a building. It doesn't know it's a building, as it can't comprehend that it's artificially created and it's not part of nature. And as such, as ASI will do things that we cannot comprehend, because it just surpasses our intelligence. And that's exciting and scary at the same time.
Welcome to the Next Insights podcast, intersecting science, technology, and consciousness. I'm your host, Michael Morrissey, strategic futurist and founder of Next Collabs. This podcast explores the transformative potential of generative AI and its many applications for personal, professional, and business growth. Join us where we celebrate the next insights, those aha moments that shift your point of view and open the door into the next paradigm. You'll hear the latest ideas and thought-provoking conversations with industry experts, authors, thought leaders, equipping you with the strategies to harness the relentless pace of change in the AI era. Whether you're a CEO, leader, or interested in personal growth, this podcast will give you the insights to leverage AI to amplify human potential and consciously shape the future for humanity first. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to another episode of the Next Insights podcast. Today, I'm excited to have Dr. Mark van Rijmenam on the show, a revered strategic futurist and innovation speaker, entrusted by top companies and governments to guide them through the evolving landscape and emerging technologies, including AI and the metaverse. His exceptional insights inspire teams to adopt and responsibly harness innovative technologies, maximizing efficiency and future-proofing their operations. Having captivated over 100,000 managers, directors, and C-level suite executives in over 25 countries across all continents, Mark's influence spans the globe. He received the Certified Speaking Professional and Global Speaking Fellow accreditation. His latest venture, FutureWise, is dedicated to fostering a just and inclusive digital future for all. Mark is a very active member of our Next Collective community, regularly attending our Monday AI Mastermind and Wednesday Book Flow, our thought leadership community where we explore themes at the intersection of science, technology, and consciousness. We hosted Mark and his book, Step into the Metaverse, How the Immersive Internet Will Unlock a $1 trillion Social Economy in Q1 2023. Mark, that was a while ago.
Wow.
And later this month, he and I will co-host several sessions devoted to Dr. Nick Bostrom's seminal book on AI, Superintelligence, Past Dangers and Strategies, and Nick's latest book on deep utopia. Nick's work was a centerpiece of Mark's dissertation thesis related to AI and exponential technology, and we'll hear more about that in the episode. So today's theme for the podcast, the evolution of intelligence. We have a preconceived idea that human evolution and human intelligence is the story of humanity, and we keep building on it for the last 2 million years. And then suddenly we have the AI moment, the AI renaissance. It's upon us, clearly. We've passed through that threshold, and we are witnessing the birth of an alien intelligence and a period, I think Mark and I both agree, of co-intelligence, where humans are fidgetily augmented by AI. Really excited to explore this theme with you. Mark, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for that great introduction, Michael. It's a pleasure to be on the show, and I'm very much looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, so the structure that I like to use for these shows, and I know that we both love continuums, past, present, future. And as a futurist, I think you have to have that sort of Janus head in the present and look into the past and look into the future and kind of hold the continuity of human history and now the update, the AI Renaissance, and the evolution of intelligence. So let's go to the past and let's look at your dissertation and how you became a kind of futurist, a strategic futurist.
Sure. So it sort of happened by accident, as all good things in life do. But if we go really far back in history in my career, it's about 12 years ago that I started a new company. I wanted to do something about big data back then. I thought big data is going to be the next big thing. I didn't really have a good understanding of what big data was and how it was going to affect our organization. So I decided to write about that. And lo and behold, within a month and a half, I was invited as the expert on big data to deliver a paid keynote for a group of business leaders. which I thought was was quite interesting. So I decided to go down a rabbit hole, and I actually never crawled out. I'm still very, very deep in the rabbit hole, having a great time down there because so much is happening in terms of new technologies, and the world is changing so fast. And I absolutely love being at the cutting edge of technologies. So in 2016, I got the opportunity to do my PhD here in Australia, where I now live. And I always wanted to live in Australia. I thought, let's take the opportunity. And although I started my PhD focused on big data and design thinking, because I had written a book about big data and I really liked design thinking, but then I came across blockchain technology and I thought, wow, blockchain, it took me a while to grasp it. This was around the DAO hack that some of you might remember. It took me a while to grasp the technology, but when I did, I like, wow, this is such a fundamental technology that's going to change society, and which I still believe, although it takes a bit longer than expected, and which is always the case with these technologies. So I decided to basically stop my PhD and start again, and then this time also incorporate AI. So my dissertation was very much about how big data, blockchain, and AI are changing organization and what we can learn from that. And the idea is that so I did a PhD by publication. So I published and had a few publishable papers, which I then brought together into my dissertation, where I had to do a literature review. And the literature that I chose was sociomateriality, which is it's a very dry theory, like a theory to do research. But I think it's quite an important theory. And my argument of my dissertation was that we should expand this theory, which is very much about having social materiality, the social being humans, materiality being basically non-human, anything that's material. And my argument was that we need a third actor to take into consideration, which is the artificial, linking to artificial intelligence, because I believe that the artificial is fundamentally different from human intelligence. It's not material, it's not human, so we need the artificial. And that was sort of my main argument. And I think the more we move into the AI era, I think the more we need to consider the artificial as an important actor within business, within society, and we should treat it as such as well. And we should understand how artificial intelligence is fundamentally different from human intelligence, and therefore will have broad implications in our society.
Totally fascinating that you sort of open the aperture from a binary kind of social and material to include something that was, and that's very prescient, that would be a third kind of, let's say, extension. I think part of the problem is that we have carbon chauvinism, like we just think we are the story. We've been at the top of the stack for so long, and suddenly there's this, we use the word alien, but I mean, in a way that's not fair. It's a form of intelligence that actually was birthed by us.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, I think this concept of carbon chauvinism comes from Max Tegmark and his book, Life 3.0. I think we both reviewed that last year in Book Flow. Talk about just that sort of preconceived idea and how to break through into including this new reality, the birth of AI.
Well, I think first we need to understand that AI, as I mentioned already, is a fundamentally different technology than human intelligence. And I call it the arrogancy of the human species, where we see ourselves at the center of the universe. We've done it for a very, very long time. And now again, we still see that, is the upper limit of intelligence is probably humanity, which I disagree with. I think we don't know what the upper limit is of intelligence, and we don't know what is possible when it comes to intelligence. I think it's also important to be aware of that AI is being created in a fundamentally different way than human intelligence has been created. So we have been created by a rather dumb process called evolution. And it's just trial and error. And while artificial intelligence is created by a smart process as humans. Moreover, we are created using carbon, which is not very much optimized for high-speed intelligence. And we are now creating artificial intelligence with silicon. So here we have a type of intelligence that is not only created differently, but is created by a different entity, and it uses different materials. So in my opinion, by definition, this artificial intelligence will behave differently, will have a different approach, will think differently, and will have different outcomes. And I think that is really, really important to understand. We might not fully understand how the AI works. And yes, of course, what we have in our head is the most complex machinery at the moment in the universe, and also the most energy efficient. But I do believe that And that's sort of my optimistic side. As you know, Michael, I consider myself as an optimistic dystopian, sort of an oxymoron or, a superposition, you could almost argue. And
love that.
You want to look at both different angles. And I think that is, so from an AI perspective, I do believe that we'll move forward significantly in the future. I'm sure we'll cover the dystopian side later in our conversation. But yeah, so my point is we need to look at this technology from a different perspective. We need to take it serious. We should, invite it to the table and work with it, play with it, experiment with it in order to understand it. And I think more organizations should do that.
Totally fascinating. That was something, I think it was like mid 2023, if I'm right, that this is when you kind of coined this concept of optimistic dystopianism.
Yeah.
And now I see it surfacing everywhere. Like everyone has finally gotten to this kind of, I love this superposition above this set of opposites, like, the opportunities, and you could just tilt in that direction and just, get into the hype cycle, or you could go be a doomer. But there was it was binary. It was a binary choice. But actually, when you pair those together and you take that sort of higher level position above the opposites, this is the only way that we can steer this. We have, of course, this is humanity first. This is about humankind, and how we can steer this for, unlocking the next generation of potential. Again, like the Renaissance.
It's funny because when I started calling myself an optimistic dystopian and sharing that during my talks for organizations, and still today, the first response is sort of a laughter, because it is an oxymoron. And people don't really understand it. But I think it's really, really important that we need to see both sides of what's happening. Because if you're only an optimist, like Andreessen Horowitz, where he wrote the techno-optimistic manifest, which I thought was terrible, because it looks it from a one side, but on the other side we have the Yudkowskis from this world, which are like complete doomers who see the total negative of this technology. And I think both hold some truth to it. But it's not binary, as you say. We need to have both perspectives. If we want to end up in a thriving digital future, we need to know the harm it can do so that we can prepare for it not to happen. And we need to know how it can improve our society so we can focus on those areas as well. And I think that is really, really important. And I think it's good to see that more people start to think that way, that it's sort of a gray field here, that we should look at technology from that perspective.
I think that applies to every problem, is that ability to have that superposition above it, to hold the tension, as Carl Jung would say, of the opposites. 1 + 1 equals like an emergent sort of novel, new. Byron used to say 1 + 1 equals a banana. Emergent, kind of like say, that's really where innovation occurs. So I love that you arrived at that. And then, to me, that totally agrees with the way I think. And I think our entire community has embraced that. Really, I think that's almost like the raison d'etre of our community, that we are playing at the superposition above it all and sort of working to consciously steer the future. That's a big part of your message.
Yeah. Recently, I got familiar with spiral dynamics. Familiar with that?
Yeah.
I thought that was really, really interesting because, you have obviously the different colors, and I'm still learning the whole theory, but you have the different colors, and there's different sort of tier 1 and tier 2 within spiral dynamics. I'm probably saying it incorrectly, but it works in colors. And the top color, I think, is yellow and turquoise. And in that field, you have a very holistic perspective on the world, and you see, you can see the larger playing field. And I think our world is so complex. We have wicked problems all over the place. And we need to have a holistic perspective that takes into consideration all stakeholders and not just the shareholders of a company, for example. And I think that is becoming increasingly important. How do we ensure that, how do we solve these wicked problems without leaving anyone behind? And that requires that superposition.
Yeah, I love that reference to spiral dynamics. We did Ken Wilber's book, Theory of Everything. Highly recommend the book. He worked with others to develop this model, spiral dynamics, and the movement from the green mean to there's a chasm there to the yellow is, I think, foundationally the sort of threshold that's necessary to navigate the future, which is effectively, it's like a wake-up moment to pass through from the green to the yellow. You have to disidentify from, in a sense, kind of reality. I'm in it, but not of it. It's like an enlightenment moment. That's what's
Yeah.
required.
Yeah.
And I think in a way, I think we can infect a sort of a larger sort of shift, because I think that foundationally is the essence of what's required here, right? And paradoxically, it's not a heavy lift. It's almost like it's a conceptual shift. And this idea of superposition, that there's something, that there's like a witness consciousness available. It's there. It's part of our makeup. You know, Sam Harris, Meditate with Sam. He'll take you under the hood to that sort of witness consciousness. We're in it, but not of it.
Yeah.
And I think that is the only way forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Nick Bostrom, it's so interesting because you recommended a podcast, Liv Bore's podcast, Win-Win, which is a phenomenal podcast. Highly recommend it. It'll be in the show notes. I watched this episode because you recommended it with Nick Bostrom, that episode number 20, yesterday. It's very interesting. Like, I guess, first of all, let's talk a little bit about Nick Bostrom and his influence on you in that book as a centerpiece of your dissertation. And then it's interesting because that was very tilted in the direction of not necessarily doom, but it was like he just in 2014 wanted to say, hey, this could go very wrong. And then if you look at the arc in this podcast as presented, fast forward to 2024, Nick is, with his new book, Deep Utopia, he's actually going to hold the opposites. And they talk about superposition. I mean, throughout the podcast, that this one is looking at almost like a post-scarcity world. And what could that look like? So he's like transcended being tilted in one direction, but I think he had to do that. That warning was very necessary. So tell us about Nick Bostrom and his influence on your work.
Nick Bostrom, of course, the well-known Oxford philosopher, who, by the way, I think Oxford University just closed down his Future of Humanity Institute, which he says was death by bureaucracy. But he wrote in 2014 Superintelligence, which is sort of the book on super AI or artificial superintelligence. And I read it as part of my PhD because, as I said, part of my PhD was focused on AI, and I wanted to understand the full grasp of how AI is going to impact organizations. And in order to do that, we need to look, I think, really long term. I always like to take a long term approach. So I read this book, and I think it's sort of the most important book in the field, because he really goes really, really, really deep into what are the implications of artificial superintelligence, what are dangers of artificial superintelligence, how can we control it, how can we not control it, what if all goes wrong, and then he coined obviously the famous metaphor of the paperclip. The paperclip metaphor, which I think, for those who are not familiar with the paperclip metaphor, in very short version, it basically means we give an AI an object function to create paperclips and to create always a better paperclip. In an infinite world, there's always a possibility that there's a better paperclip, even if it's a 0.00000 and like infinite numbers of zeros, 1% chance. There is a chance that you can create a better paperclip. So this machine will always create better paperclips, and it soon will turn the entire Earth and then the entire galaxy and then the entire universe into a paperclip machine, because that's the sole objective of this AI. And his statement there was that if we don't think about the objective function of an AI, the chances of us going into the wrong direction are really, really big. We have to align it with human values. Now, that's where the problem lies, because aligning with human values is really, really, really difficult, because your values are different from my values, are different from other people's values, and they change over time, and they're different per geography and per background, etc. So that's really, really hard. And we also can't think of all the possibilities. We can't incorporate all the possibilities in creating that objective function. We might think that we do the right thing, but then AI finds a novel of a different angle that obviously we didn't think of, and we are in trouble. And that's sort of what his book is all about. And he describes in detail, would a kill switch work, where we can just switch off? And his argument is probably not, because if we truly have artificial superintelligence, it will have found a way to operate the machine without using the traditional electricity as we know it. And so there are lots of examples that talk about that. But he really goes really, really deep in that. And I think that is a great way to think about a possible future, and to really dive into all the different scenarios of what could go wrong, and how could we overcome that, and how could we not overcome that, so that we then can learn from that. So absolutely fascinating book. I think still very, very relevant. And I can definitely recommend anyone to read it.
Well, it's interesting. Like in 2014, through to 2022, we didn't really see this coming. I mean, he had established and gone sort of past the event horizon to go, oh, ASI, that could happen. And then, of course, we had that sort of validation moment in November 2022 where suddenly it was like a wake-up moment. Just for our audience, outline, I know you're very good at sort of outlining this AI, AGI, ASI, just that sort of continuum of what's happening there.
So we have narrow AI, AGI, and ASI. And narrow AI is an AI which has been around for a long time, which is an AI that is very, very good at a very, very narrow domain and achieves a superhuman capabilities. Already has that, and we see that happening. That that's the technology that we have today. I mean, if you ask AI to find you the most optimal route from A to B, it's done that in seconds. And we humans, we cannot do that. And so that already exists. Now, AGI, artificial general intelligence, is sort of the level where we reach an AI that is as intelligent as a human being. So it has all the capabilities, it has all the reasoning capabilities that we have, but at an infinitely faster pace because it's silicon and not carbon. And then the next step is artificial superintelligence, which is an AI that is infinitely more intelligent than the entire intelligence of the human species. And there are different ideas around how fast we would move from artificial general intelligence to artificial superintelligence. My perspective is that if we achieve self-improvement within AI, then I think that phase from AGI to ASI is going to be really, really short. There are other people who think differently, but I think if we instill AGI with self-improvement skills, which at the moment we can't, we don't know how to do that, then it would self-improve really, really fast. And because it thinks at a million times faster than us, I think the moment we both have an AGI and my AGI sees the light a second earlier than yours, then mine will win and you're dust. That's sort of my idea around this. And as I said, there are different perspectives around the world of researchers and thought leaders who have all different perspectives on this. But I think once we reach artificial superintelligence, it's truly an alien intelligence because it would be able to do things, to come up with things, to think about things that we cannot comprehend. And it's like an ant looking up a building. It doesn't know it's a building as it can't comprehend that it's artificially created and that it's not part of nature. And as such, as ASI will do things that we cannot comprehend because it just surpasses our intelligence. And that's exciting and scary at the same time.
Taking a quick break from this week's episode to tell you how to get even more free insights on AI, science, technology, and consciousness delivered straight to your inbox. Sign up for the Next Collabs newsletter, where we unpack the latest in AI every Wednesday. When you subscribe, you get the insights from myself, Gary Bowles, and our team of experts at Next Collabs. We're sharing what we're discussing, thinking, and reading weekly in the world of AI. Why join? We're not about filler. We strive to offer high-value content to keep you on the leading edge of the AI era. We have our finger on the pulse and want to share that with you and keep you posted on our free panel discussions and events. It's your weekly touch point to staying ahead of the curve. Click the link below in the show notes and sign up for the Next Collabs newsletter. Now, back to the episode.
Going to this theme of the idea of the evolution of intelligence, let's just talk about perhaps where we are in this kind of continuum that just opened up. So we have human intelligence, 2 million years up to, let's say, November 2022, where it was gradually over 60 years, AI had a lot of winners. And then all of a sudden on the exponential kind of moment, it just goes straight up like a hockey stick. Huge improvements, so fast, huge adoption. And so at the moment I've mapped out, and I've shown you this map on my Miro board of, kind of where we're at right now. And we're coincidentally reading Ethan Mullen's book, Co-Intelligence. Living and working with AI, I find that really is the spirit of maybe 2024. That's where we're at. 2023, I say that was the novelty of the tools, like the wow effect. But now we're settling in after a year of AI and we go, okay, what's next? And Ken Kelly talks about this too. This concept of the phase transition. We have carbon kind of chauvinism, but we have to open the aperture and go, something just got birthed here that is going to, in a sense, double my capacity, if not more. Like it expands who I am. I'm not alone, and we are not alone suddenly. It's like a double-sided kind of statement, right? It's like, oh my God, we're not alone. And at the same time, I'm not alone. I have an AI assistant that can be part of my thinking process, my ideation process, even my psychology. I can discuss with my personal AI.
Yeah.
So that's the moment. I say 2022 through 2030, we are kind of, let's embrace fully human and smart machine, the spirit of the age of collaboration. Always invite AI to the table. That's kind of where I think we are right now. What are your thoughts? And of course, I mean, you're someone who has fully embraced the concept of phygital, which was a word, by the way, that I learned in your book, Step into the Metaverse. I think that's the first time I ever heard that sort of framed in the way you did in that book. And you do that with your own practices. So tell us a bit about how you're embracing this moment.
Sure. I literally live and breathe cutting edge technologies. And I think where we're going through now is we're going through a digital renaissance. But it's a renaissance that doesn't last 100, 200 years like the original renaissance. But it is a renaissance that takes 2 to 3, 5, 6, 7 years at most. And in that time, the entire society will change. And that's very difficult for people to see because we're not built for exponential thinking. We just, like the vast majority of people, cannot think exponentially. And that's a problem for us as a species because we are going through exponential times. So the way I overcome this, and then what I always recommend organizations as well, is you really have to start practicing and experimenting and start playing with with this technology. I said it 10 years ago when we talked about big data. I said it 6 years ago when I talked about blockchain, and I said about the metaverse. I said now about AI. You have to start experimenting. You have to start using these tools. Although it might not deliver a lot of value for you immediately, but if you snooze, you lose. It moves so fast at the moment that if you don't pay attention, you will be left behind. And I make the statement that by 2030 there will be 2 types of companies: one that uses AI and one that doesn't exist. And I don't think there's anything in between.
Powerful.
So I use AI myself. I'm a keynote speaker, among others. So I have the brand The Digital Speaker. And it has always been my idea to clone myself, to digitally clone myself. And so early this year, I finally managed to do that. So I have a digital clone. You can talk to me on demand via text, audio, and video. And that's where I differ because there are different cloning tools and platforms out there. But you can actually have a video conversation with my digital twin in 29 languages about anything that I've ever created in the past 12 years. And that's absolutely fascinating. And so I was interviewed a couple of weeks ago by a gentleman for his new book, and he asked me several questions. And I said, what might be fun to also ask the same questions to my digital twin and see what answers would come back. And he did, and the answers were pretty much similar. And he placed them side by side in the book, sort of as a proof of what's happening. And and the fact that this is possible nowadays, I do believe that in the next 5-7 years, everyone will have a digital twin, and digital twin might talk to each other and organize on our behalf. How that will look like? Will it be a better future or a worse future? I'm not sure yet, but I do think that's where we're heading, because AI is an extension of what we do and an extension of our thought process, and all of a sudden we can do so much more. I use AI all the time, like literally all the time. And it's just, that has made my work so much better, so much faster, so much more efficient. And that's also, I think, where the challenge lies for humanity. Because, we see these stories being told by a lot of people, a lot of predominantly big tech, as well as governments, we've been here before. This is just another technology. I mean, in the past, we've always seen that there's a technology. Yes, it will kill jobs, but it will always come back more jobs. Look at the steam machine. Look at the agriculture, all those kind of things. Instead of 90-80% people in agriculture, it's like 2%, and we have lowest unemployment rates all around the world practically. But I do believe that this time is different, because now we have a technology that can make autonomous decisions. This is the first time we have a technology that can make decisions without human beings. More importantly, it's a technology that allows us to be more efficient, more effective, so increase output, reduce cost, and as a result, improve the shareholders' profit. And we live in a capitalist society. So if you are a for-profit organization, which there are about, I think, 17 million around the world, it means you would always implement this technology. Always. Because if you don't do it, your competitor will do it, and then will buy you, and then it will happen after all. So we are going through literally a phase transition where, not yet, it will take another couple of years. I think 2 to 3 years, and not much will happen. And then suddenly, bam, we will see 10, 20, 30% unemployment rates across the world, because all of a sudden organizations are just letting everyone go, because we are living in a capitalist society. So as an organization, you have to implement this technology, and it improves output. So you need fewer people. And that's just, and people don't talk about that enough, I think.
You made an interesting statement that I've heard, that organizations are a manifestation of superintelligence.
Yeah, you could argue that we already have superintelligence in our world, because no single person can create an iPhone, like literally no single person. And still we have iPhones, which are a supercomputer in our pocket that is infinitely more capable than the first computers 50, 60 years ago. So you could sort of argue that an organization is a form of intelligence, and it operates in a certain way. And you have different organizations, so every organization is constructed differently, so different types of intelligence with different outcomes, and some are better than others. Apple, in this case, is a great example of a company that's really good at it. And so you could argue that this is some kind of super intelligence already that allows us to build stuff that no single human could ever accomplish. So it's already here. The alien intelligence is already here.
I mean, that helps us as an analog to at least understand what it could look like. That it has, I would say this would be Byron Reese and others, this concept of it has emergent properties.
Yeah.
Right. That, as you say, it's able to do something that, no single person can do. And again, it's sort of the sum of the parts is much greater than any one contributor. So we're in this short period, really. As you say, the Renaissance may have been 200 years long, and then suddenly it gets compressed in this sort of exponential age. And I think for humans, this is almost impossible to grasp.
Absolutely.
It's very much like enlightenment moments, right? Enlightenment might happen to humans once in a while, right?
That's a challenge here, that we have a lot of difficulty in grasping what's going on. I think it's our role as thought leaders in this space to show people what the impact will be of this technology and how it is going to affect society in very drastic ways. And we need to prepare, because societies are big cargo ships, and they take time to turn. So we need to start turning them right now, because otherwise we'll sail into the rocks. And I don't see that happening. And I sort of understand why it's not happening, because the objective function that we have in society is generally wrong. The objective function of politics is, will I get reelected in the next election? It has nothing to do with the objective function of what's best for society. It is about, will I be reelected? And that's what sort of is causing the problems. We don't have a long-term perspective within society. We don't think long-term, which we don't have it's not in our genes to think long-term, because when we were running on savannas, we didn't have to think long-term. So we've never really been taught that. But we should start teaching our children that we need to start thinking long-term, that we need to have this, this yellow perspective from spiral dynamics, or even the turquoise perspective spiral dynamics, to look at all these things in a different way. Only then can we solve all these wicked problems that we're facing.
That's really fascinating. I have a diagram that I think I showed you, which I call it direct to AI. And I think that's something that you need to embrace in this moment, this AI moment, this co-intelligent moment that we're kind of passing through. And this speaks to the problem of short-term thinking and having a sort of a long event horizon based on, we're biological and we're in space-time as humans. We do everything in a very linear way. Certainly pre-AI, the factory model, we've done well with that sort of form of productivity, one thing after another. So if you can imagine a bunch of dots to get to number from 1 to 6, 6 is the bright red dot. That's where you completed the idea or the concept of the project. But you had to go through this long linear process to get there. Now we're being asked to bypass that long, arduous, heavy lift and go direct to push the button, go direct to AI. Even Ethan Mollick talks about the button. And I think our community and you and I, we've, embraced this idea. And effectively, I think this begins to answer your question about how do we solve for being able to think long-term, go to AI. I think AI is part of the opener. It's the unlocker that we can actually get beyond our sort of limited sort of cognitive sense of perspective and, go to AI to help us see a bigger picture. I can ask AI, how was the Renaissance defined?
And it tells me that in the 19th century, actually, it was post-rationalized as a period of several hundred years. But it wasn't until like the 19th century that they named it. Well, I mean, I could have done a search on that, but like in real time, I could just go to AI and I fill in gaps in my knowledge.
Well, and I think what is especially interesting with AI is that you can start to combine the dots, like also different dots. So all of a sudden you can ask, how does this topic, align or integrate with this topic? And they can be completely independent and separate from each other. And then AI, because one thing that AI is quite good at is sort of creativity and come up with novel things, and hence the challenge of hallucinations. But all of a sudden it can link different theories. It can link different ideas to each other in novel ways. And I think that's fascinating. How does theory A link to theory B? And they might be completely separate theories. And it comes up with this answer that gives us new inspiration, new ideas, and we can then build on top of that. So having this tool available that does that for you, and where you don't have to make the link between two separate theories, but it does it for you. And then based on that, you can move forward again. We stand on the shoulders of artificial giants. And I think that is really valuable.
I asked Pi about this conversation myself, and Pi started talking about network thinking. You and I've been developing within Next Collabs and our community this concept of a thought partner, right? And that, as Roy Vela often says, it's like extended RAM. We just got some extended RAM. Like, enjoy this moment. You can get beyond yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, to take all of these ideas down to, let's say, we've gone through the present, although one thing I'd like to touch on really briefly is, kill jobs. Like, this is out there, and you've done some thinking around this. So present to us, briefly, your position on how do we navigate the future of work and jobs.
As I already mentioned just before, due to the capitalist society that we live in, that's why I believe AI will kill a very, very large number of jobs, probably at least 1 billion jobs, which is roughly around 20% of the jobs that are out there in the world. That's a lot of jobs. And we've seen, I think Goldman Sachs has 300 million and basically nobody really knows. And for me, mine is a guesstimate as well, but it's just based on simply looking at, we have a technology that will make your business more efficient, more effective, reduce cost, and increase your profit. So it is going to be implemented. So if we know that that's going to happen, we should start preparing for that as a society. Because jobs, no matter even if it's a crappy job gives us meaning. It gets us up out of bed in the morning. And if we don't have jobs anymore, what does that mean? How will it affect society? The one thing that I think is going to be a lot bigger is entertainment. Because, if you work, 4 days or 3 days or 2 days instead of, 5 or 6 days, what are you going to do? You can't lie on the couch and do nothing all the time. Probably people will move into entertainment more. So I think we'll see a massive uptake of entertainment. Something that I recently published an article with my 10 predictions for 2035. And one of the ones that I coined was living movies, where we, integrate AI with spatial computing and mixed reality, and we move it to a whole different level than we know today. So I do think that we move more into that direction, but that doesn't solve the problem of a society where 20-30% of the people are unemployed. What are they going to do? What are they going to buy? Is a universal basic income the answer? I don't know. I haven't done enough research in that direction. Do we need a robo-tax? Probably we do, because if the organizations become smaller in number of employees but bigger in the output in dollars, we have a problem. And what probably will happen is that 5-7 years from now we'll come to the conclusion, and we fired too many people, and now the people don't have the money anymore to buy our products. And then obviously there are other people who say, well, everything will become practically free of charge, because in the world of abundance, everything will probably become free. That might be the case in the long run, but not necessarily in the mid to long run. So we'll have to go through a transition as a society, and some societies will do a better job than others, and those that think long term today already will come out as winners. And I think one society that's doing quite well is Singapore, where they just a couple of weeks ago announced that everyone aged 40 years and older will get a grant from the government to re-skill themselves. Brilliant. absolutely brilliant and a very, very powerful idea indeed. And so I think that world orders will shift in the coming decades, where some societies will struggle with this transition and some will do very, very well. And so we are at the start of a very, very disruptive era, I would say.
And by the way, Deep Utopia by Nick Bostrom, that book is about this. So if you're interested, join us, as we explore these themes at Bookflow and the Next Collective. He calls it technological maturity. The concept of a solved world, maximally optimized, what gives meaning and purpose to life when everything is covered by AI, post-work utopia, different stages, post-scarcity, post-work, post-effort, especially when you can just download it. Like, these are fascinating topics.
These are absolutely fascinating topics, but we shouldn't forget that is a long time away. That's not going to happen in the next 10 or 20 years. The post everything, we might get there. I wouldn't be surprised. But to get to that stage, there will be a lot of disruption. A lot of disruption.
Good. Yeah. Revolution.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's sort of bring this to sort of the future, what you're working on now and where you're going, and this concept of FutureWise. Tell us more about that. Super excited to hear more.
Sure. So FutureWise is, the world is moving so fast at the moment. As a futurist, I sometimes struggle staying up to date, and it's my job to stay up to date. So my assumption is that, well, it's not only my assumption, we tested this as well, but is that if I can't stay up to date, everyone must be struggling, especially large organizations. If there's one thing that they need to do is stay up to date. So we are working on a company called FutureWise, where we use AI to turn the best non-AI content into hyper-personalized daily insights in many formats, many languages, while rewarding the original content creator. And especially the latter part is really important, because we live in a world where information overload is $1 trillion problem, economists have estimated. And we also have a significant problem of misinformation, deepfakes, and the trust in media is an all-time low. So I believe that if we can change the shift from clickbait to quality, we can have a different narrative in society. And I still value democracies. So, if you're in a dictatorship, media doesn't matter, But in a democracy, I think, the media is very, very important. Journalists and etc. So what we try to use AI. So we curate, we synthesize, we license, and we repackage the content so that you are in the know without being out of time. And we get rid of the noise, and we just provide you the value to grow your expertise at scale. So that's what we're doing. Part of this will be having an AI that you can talk to, so you can help improve your expertise. And this is all hyper personalized. So I don't care about who you are, if you're man or female, where you live, your age. I really don't care about that. What I do care about is what's your persona, what's your preferred tone of voice, what's your preferred writing style, because I can then tailor the content to you, so that you are always engaged with the content, and it becomes a lot more interesting. So that's sort of what we try to do. Our long-term mission is to equalize and scale access to knowledge globally, so that we all have more access to knowledge. And we can understand that, because I would love to learn, for example, from the Chinese thought leaders, from the Indian thought leaders, from the Arabic thought leaders that might not necessarily speak English. With AI, I can talk to them. With AI, I can understand them. With AI, I can know what's going on, so that we can learn from each other, so that we can see different perspectives, so that we don't end up in this filter bubble. Because I do believe, we can learn from the Chinese, and we can learn from the Arabs, and we can learn from the Africans, and we can learn from the Indians, and they can learn from us. And change is so fast at the moment that we need to have a different tool to understand each other better, and that's what we're trying to build.
I love that. This speaks to the unlock moment and the potential of AI to scale thought leadership.
Yeah.
And optimize for intersectionality. And we know that, intersectionality and recombination is where innovation occurs. And kind of paradoxically, this is where AI is a threat to humanity, but at the same time, AI can stitch humanity together.
Yeah, I do think so. If we can understand each other better, I've always said I've lived abroad a lot, I've traveled a lot, I'm very fortunate about that, I'm very aware of that. But I always said that if we, as governments all around the world, decide that if you turn 18, you have to go abroad for at least half a year, and you can't go to the next country, you have to at least go halfway across the world. I think if we would all do that, we would gain such a better perspective on each other. And I do believe that conflicts would probably dissolve if we were to do that. Because if you travel the world, if you learn from other people, you gain different perspectives, and you move more into the yellow and to the turquoise of spiral dynamics by seeing a different world. Well, this is sort of a pipe dream, because obviously it's never going to happen. But yeah, if only that were to happen, if only we would, give each kid an 18-year-old and I don't know, 5,000 bulls or whatever to go travel the world and don't come back until you've been away for half a year and learn from each other. I think the world would be a different place.
Well, I mean, I love the arc of this conversation and how we've moved from, humanity the story of humanity, to this kind of phygital moment, co-intelligence and thought partner, and a kind of merge symbiosis with an experimentation with this new sort of potential to amplify, not only the individual, but, humanity. And then where this could be going. But then what I like about what you're saying is that this has the potential to amplify humanity in general if we steer it right. Completely fascinating. I think the thing that makes this very unusual is that I would add the word the exponential evolution of intelligence. That may be the update.
I like that.
And then the other one, this is the Next Insights podcast. So I'm just sharing with you a few of the insights that I've picked up through this conversation to bring this, to conclusion. There's something here that has come up about exponential and enlightenment and waking up. And I think that might be the mapping, because we know that from, the East and how that's been fused into the West over the last, let's say 100 years, the 20th century. And this concept of waking up. And in a way, like we understand from our point of view, from the West, of the idea of, the long tail, and suddenly there's like the exponential shift. And we had one of those, I think, in November of 2022. And to open the aperture that we can expect there's going to be another one, AGI, likely within this decade. And that you could begin to overlap those two sort of positions onto each other and go, this is very much like a waking up moment for humanity, where we could actually move to the yellow meme, as Ken Wilber would say. So this is a fascinating kind of moment of convergence. And, this also maps onto Maslow and Jung, where, this concept of the transcender, this idea of transcending, that AI actually allows us to transcend our conditioned self.
But the challenge is that this transcendence is not going to be a smooth process.
Fair enough.
And that's the challenge that we have to deal with. So we have to make it through to the other end. If we reach the other end, I think we can all agree that life will be pretty good. But getting there is the challenge. And we need thought leaders, we need leaders to understand that process that we have to go through. And I think Roy Vella shared an article on LinkedIn about some scientist, some astronomer, who said that within 200 years, AI will kill us all. To which I responded, well, it's not going to take 200 years. It will probably happen a lot faster if AI decides to kill us all. But the point of the astronomer was that the great filter theory, which obviously states, why is there no other aliens out there? And there is some kind of filter that sort of prevents a species from going from a tier 1 to a tier 2 as a civilization that can actually travel across the universe, is that AI will at some point kill everyone. I don't think AI will kill us all. There won't be Terminator robots, humanoids. There won't be a Tesla Optimus bot roaming the street and killing everyone. But I do think that AI has the potential to cause a lot of harm, not by itself, but by the way people are using it. And deep fakes and misinformation is one example of that. So hopefully we are smart enough as a species to find a way around and navigate ourselves through this difficult period that's ahead of us. But yeah, we do need all the intelligence that we have as a species to think about that and to take us through it, because we have to go through it one way or another.
Well, I think a combination of, future-wise, sort of, let's say, leveraging AI to move thought leadership into a kind of scale thought leadership. Really looking forward to that and being a part of that. And also, what we're doing in our community. Thought leadership, I agree. I think maybe that's like the way we bring this home, that's more important than ever. And it sort of transcends, politics and all the rest. We need those people who see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And help us to in real time navigate the future for humanity first. Really love this conversation, Mark. I just feel so proud that, in our community, you're a big part of it.
I very much enjoy being part of the community.
Yeah, and it's like I've known you for a year, but I feel like I've known you for a long time.
I know. We haven't even met in person, so there you go.
Yeah, that'll be the next thing is to meet, beyond virtual. Let's meet in the 3D.
Yeah.
Thank you for the conversation, and stay tuned. I think Mark and I need to do a part 2 at some point.
We will. That sounds like an excellent idea. Probably next week because things move so quickly.
Well, that's true. Okay, all the best, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Insights podcast. If you enjoy this episode, take a screenshot and share it with a friend. And if you really love the podcast, head over to wherever you're listening and leave a rating or a review. This helps our show get in front of more people interested in shaping the future of science, technology, and consciousness. Finally, to receive even more insights on what we're discussing, thinking, and reading at Next Collabs, sign up for our weekly newsletter by clicking the link in the show notes. I'll talk to you next week, but until then, consciously embrace disruption, my friends.